Yes, welcome into SportsBIT. Betting Insight today, Pauly and Teddy. Wednesday, March 1st. We made it. The madness right around the corner. And speaking of that, the deep dive, who has what it takes to win the big dance, part 1 coming up today. Big game breakdown, the doubleheader on ESPN. Cavs, Celtics, Rockets, Clippers. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books to start. You know how we do it. Bad beats right off the bat. Portland catching 4. They go to over. You never want the dog in OT. Detroit wins by 7 in overtime, Teddy.
The Pistons have been doing this. They've been finding ways to steal games. Portland led this game wire to wire the first 3 quarters. They gave it up in the fourth, and they rallied back to force OT. And nothing but Portland money in that game, by the way. Blazers from +5, bet down to +4 at Detroit. Obviously lose by 7. Worth noting, even though the Pistons have been sneaking some perhaps point spread covers they shouldn't have had, they are 7-2 straight up and against the number at the Palace since February 1st.
Yeah, how about this one? Duke was bet up to 7. They led by 17 with 10 minutes left, but Florida State gets the money.
Oh, yeah. Duke led by 10 with 40 seconds left. But Florida State played the game all the way out and got the cash. Yeah, real tough beat if you had the Blue Devils last night. They were the right side. Unfortunately, the right side didn't cash.
Bad beat and a bad bet. This was a great game to watch. 2 good teams, in my opinion. Oklahoma State and Iowa State. And point spread hijinks. Lucky for us, Evans hits the 3 with a second left. But, Teddy, this was as high as 164, and the total was bet down to 159.
I was really surprised to see as much under money as we did for this ballgame. We knew it was going to be a shootout. We talked about it on yesterday's show. And there were a fair few scramble points, 15 points in the final minute. But closed the total closed 159. They finished with $169. And as you mentioned, bad bet, all that under money, bad beat. My condolences if you had Iowa State. They certainly were on the wrong side. JUWAN Evans hit the 3 with that second left. And of course, that cash for us, line bounced around between +3.5 and +4 all day. Cyclones win by 3. Not enough to get the money.
Yeah, I could see both sides of this because Iowa State was up 10 late, but then it was a 3-point game and Oklahoma State had the ball with 7 seconds. So they're just going to come down and shoot a 3. They turn it over, and then Iowa State scores. But also there was Underwood got a technical in the first half that changed the game, and Iowa State went on a big run after the T on a BS call. And there was a huge sequence, too, in the second half where Oklahoma State was shooting the front end. They missed it, and then they fouled on the rebound. That was a 4-point swing, too. But a hell of a game, Teddy. Do you think both of these teams could make a Sweet 16 run?
I can tell you this. We're going to make money with Oklahoma State in the tournament. Iowa State, maybe. Oklahoma State, I'm confident of it.
Bad bet. Golden State bet up to 7 on the road against the Wizards. They lost KD early. He's got the MRI coming up later today, and they were down 19 before they made a big run.
Oh, they made a huge run. They were down 19, and they led the game in the fourth quarter. Washington took control down the stretch. The second night in a row that Golden State never led by more than the point spread for the entire 48 minutes. The biggest lead last night was 4 points. The biggest lead at Philadelphia was 13 points. Warriors not even sniffing point spread covers. Of course, Steph Curry had a lot to do with that. Just 2 of 20 from 3-point range over the last 2 nights. And John Wall last night, he didn't shoot very well, just 6 of 20 from the floor, but he tied his career high with 19 assists. The Wizard hit a bunch of big shots down the stretch in that game.
Yeah, how about some bad bets? The Jazz were the underdog and went off the favorite at OKC. They lost by 3. The markets reacted to no Oladipo. Westbrook was Superman.
Oh, my God, he was insane. 43 points, 11 rebounds, 10 assists. Although he did have 0 steals and 8 turnovers, but he was unstoppable down the stretch. The Jazz actually rallied back from a huge first-half deficit. They're in position to win and cover. The last 2 minutes, Russ Westbrook was unstoppable for OKC, even against an elite defensive team. And how about this stat from last night? It was just bizarre. The Jazz, the number 1 defensive team in the NBA, based on the advanced metric stats. OKC, dead last, number 30 in the NBA in 3-point shooting percentage. So what happened last night? The first half, Oklahoma City, 12 of 13 from beyond the arc. They only missed 1 3-pointer. Obviously, all those 3-pointers made a difference at the end when they were able to rally back and get the money. Bad bet if you had Utah.
All right, always like this too. Bad for the books. Purdue opened 10.5. Closed 11.5 at a handful of shops. You know what that means? Middle time, they won by 11. Hoosiers fouled down 11. Purdue made 2 free throws. Indiana layup in the closing seconds to get those 2 points back. And Maryland, here was your big public play, Teddy, by 20 over Rutgers, blowout.
Yeah, and the Terps, the number 1 square play on the board last night. Every public bettor had them. And sometimes those public sides cashed, even though North Carolina didn't for us 2 shows ago. Disappointing result there. But, we got a tweet about what we use for the play of the day. And I want to make this real clear, all right? We're always going to use something that we talked about on the show. In most of the time we use one of the games we do in big game breakdown. So we're limited in what we're going to use as play of the day. Sometimes, Pauly, you and I have a disagreement. When you and I have a disagreement, we throw it out and look at the other game. And that's what happened with the North Carolina. You and I had a disagreement on the Baylor game that we were talking about using, and I would have lost that one if I had gotten my chance to use POD there. So it's going to happen. Some nights the PODs are going to be stronger than others, and that's just the nature of what we do. But anything we're going to put out as a play a day is something that we do believe in on some level as a relatively positive expectation wager. Some are really positive expectation. Some are little inches. But you know what? When you're getting a little inch of a positive expectation, it adds up over time.
And one more. They looked like a tournament team. They looked apart for 30 minutes. Vandy was up 19. They lose, though, at Kentucky, and there was plenty of Vandy money.
Yeah, I mean, this is a bad for the books for sure. The Commodores bet from 12.5 down to in the 11 range. They cashed wire to wire, and the Wildcats continue their money-losing ways, Pauly. They win by only 6 as double-digit chalk. Now 4-11 against the spread, the last 15 since that 3-0 straight up and ATS start to SEC play.
Streak alert, thanks to Ian Cameron, friend of the show, NHL. Nashville has played 11 straight overs as they went over last night in a 6-5 or 5-4 shootout. Those streaks, no one pays attention to them. Great job, Ian, pointing that out. 11 straight overs for Nashville. Good hockey number there. Good streak there. Thanks to Ian for that one, an SBR contributor. Up next, big game breakdown, the doubleheader on ESPN, and we'll get to the deep dive. Who can cash? Who's going to make some money for you? And who can win the big dance coming up on SportsBIT. Betting Insight today on SBRpicks.com.
Go to SBRodds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.
Back on SportsBIT, Betting Insight today, Pauly and Teddy. Time for big game breakdown. As always, live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Game 1 of a doubleheader on ESPN. Cavs hit the road to take on the Celtics. Cleveland won, 222 the total. Cleveland was laying 10 in the first meeting. November 3rd, they won 128 to 122. They were laying 6 on December 29th and won 124 to 118. A must for Boston to get in the hunt for the 1 seed in the East. They trailed by 4 games. They're 1-2 straight up in ATS post-break. It could be 0-3, but Detroit went 16 of 35 from the line on Sunday, Teddy.
Yeah, and it wasn't even just the 16 of 35 from the line on Sunday. The Pistons still led that game with a minute and a half left. And then Reggie Jackson had, let's just call it an ill-advised three-pointer that turned the game in Boston's favor. Nothing the Celtics did. The Pistons kind of gave it up. So Boston certainly hasn't played their best basketball in the last couple of days. But note this point spread. Here are the Celtics that are pretty much at this stage, especially without Kyle Lowry for Toronto. Boston is regarded as the second best team in the East, based on just about any set of power ratings you're going to look at. And the Celtics are still road chalk at Boston. They're favored against anybody in the Eastern Conference on any floor. Now, the Celtics do have Avery Bradley back. An impact player for them on the defensive end of the court. The question is, how long is it going to take for them to get the best possible rotations in order for Brad Stevens and company? Bradley, 3 steals in less than 15 minutes in his first game back, but he didn't play at all in the second half, which Atlanta pretty much dominated. They blew Boston out of the gym. And, of course, why do they need Avery Bradley? Look at the numbers right here. Very clear. Last year, the Celtics, 4th in the NBA. This year, the Celtics, 17th in the NBA on the defensive end of the court.
We got a problem with Isaiah Thomas. Since the break, 20 of 61 shooting, 15 assists, first 12 turnovers. He was 4 of 21 in the loss against Atlanta. Is he worn down, or are opponents starting to figure him out? IT says, quote, "I'll be all right." That's what teams are game planning to do. The whole world knows what time it is in the fourth quarter, and they're game planning to stop me. I just have to figure it all out, and I will, end quote. Like the Celtics, the Cavs have taken a big defensive hit. Last year, they were 10th. This year, they're 20th. New rotation, new guys in there, injuries, guys out, and now they're trying to get D. Will and hopefully Bogut.
Well, yeah, and it looks as if, I think it's pretty clear now. Bogut's been signed, D. Will's going to be signed. And remember, a lot of new rotation faces for Cleveland since the start of the season. Basically, their entire bench. This team is not Golden State when it comes to keeping a rotation intact from day one and finding a great rhythm together. Remember, they brought in Kyle Korver. They brought in Derek Williams. Now, we're talking about Bogut and Darren Williams. And Korver and Williams aren't little parts of that team. They're enormous contributors. Between them, the win over Milwaukee earlier in the week, where they have 56 minutes, 27 points, 10 boards off the bench. That's contributing and significant contributions. But, the Cavs win the Bogut Derby. They're not going to get him to play for the weekend. They will have D. Will tonight. And I don't know if I don't think he has enough in the tank to be an impact player, or certainly not a starter. But he's definitely someone who can contribute experience off the bench, and he is most assuredly hungry for a ring.
Here's D. Will, quote, "I know a lot of guys on the team, and, playing with LeBron in the Olympics, I played with Kyle, and he's one of my good friends. We still talk. I just feel like I'll be comfortable here. I'll have a significant role here with the need for a backup for KYRIE and also being able to play with KYRIE. We get a chance to play together, and of course, competing for a championship is something I haven't had a chance to do," end quote. LeBron number 2, KYRIE 16th in minutes per game. They need Williams to help Irving get off the court and handle the ball more when on the floor with LeBron to help him reduce his workload as well. Were you surprised that Bogut decided to go to Cleveland after, I guess you might say, Golden State kind of stuck it to him and let him go?
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all that he wants to go to Cleveland when Golden State let him go. And these are moves that will make the Cleveland Cavaliers a better team eventually. I don't know that they're going to make the Cleveland Cavaliers a better team from day one. And the fact that you're now talking about LeBron and Kyrie Irving, two guys who have played major minutes, too many minutes, and everybody knows that. Now we're in a situation where they're not going to be playing as many minutes. Be aware of that as you're trying to bet Cavs games over the next couple of weeks. You're not getting as much LeBron and Kyrie as you were early in the season.
Game 2, doubleheader on ESPN, live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Rockets and the Clippers from LA. Clippers 1.5, 232 the total. Rockets kept up their pace against Indiana, but they couldn't make a shot. It was 18-2 early. Rockets just shot 36% from the field. Starters shot 32%, 3 of 27 from 3, but they still scored 108 points, Teddy. I mean, nobody could make a damn thing.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. Okay, they were ice cold throughout. The starters couldn't hit a shot. They were ice cold from three-point range, and they still score 108. That's Houston. And the key, of course, has been the bench. The first 3 games with Louis Williams on board have been unbelievable. The starters, 391 points. The bench, 388. I'm sorry, not 398 points. That can't be right. 191 and 188. I'm sorry. But the bottom line is they're scoring a boatload of points, and the bench has been phenomenal. And now, the Rockets couldn't make a shot against Indy. The Clips went to OT versus Charlotte on Sunday, but, they were pretty efficient on offense. Chris Paul, 17 assists versus 0 turnovers.
LA won the boards, though, 47-43. They forced Charlotte into as many turnovers as assists, 16 each. The D had 14 steals. Batum and Kemba were 14 of 23 from 3. But I watched that game. Batum was dynamite. They also were 27 of 30 at the line. Griffin was fresh and had chemistry with Paul, 43 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists. When these teams get together, it's usually a shootout. This total. What do you think of the Clippers' favorite here, though? They're not the better team.
I'm surprised to see this number. Let's put it this way. My power number does not say the Clippers should be favored in this ballgame. But let's go back to the Clippers' defense in that last game. When Batum and Walker go 14 of 23 combined from three-point range, and the Hornets go 27 of 30 to the free throw line, and LA still wins the game, that means they're doing something right, no question. And of course, we've got the 2 Clippers in Blake Griffin and Chris Paul, both of whom have dealt with injuries again this season. But the fact is, when you deal with injuries all year and you miss extended time, you come back, you find a rhythm, and you're fresher than everybody else. Here's a quote from Chris Paul prior to the game against Charlotte. Quote, "Blake and I talked before the game about being aggressive, and he could have had more. He could have had 50 points. So you've got 2 superstars right now for LA, that are a little bit fresher, and I'm not going to say necessarily at the top of their game. Paul's only been back for a couple, but certainly positive signs for the Clippers. But, yeah, you're right. My priority number does not have LA as the favorite in this game. One of the reasons why we'll be talking about this game when it comes to play of the daytime.
All right, up next, the deep dive, part 1 on the madness and who can win it all, coming up on SportsBIT. Betting insight today on SBRpicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
Back on SportsBIT, time for the deep dive. March is here. It's time for the madness. History shows up so many things about what it takes to be a champion. Teddy has an article he writes every year. Let's start with long shots. Very rare that you see a long shot to win it all. Of course, the team that hurt your feelings, UConn, was on the ropes in the first round against St. Joe's. They win that game and then win it all that year.
Yeah, and that's the only time I've gotten that I've missed with my list that we're going to give at the end of this deep dive about who the national championships could possibly be. I've been, writing this article and talking about this pretty much straight since I moved to Vegas. I moved to Vegas in 98. I think I started writing it in 99 or 2000. And the list will contain the champion, period. The question is, how do we come up with this list? And of course, we could talk about Kevin Ollie's Huskies. That team, St. Joe's had them beat in the first round. They're supposed to go out. They end up winning the title. That was truly a miracle run. And of course, they got to play Butler in the national championship game, which helped in that regard. But let's take a look at the list of the last 19 NCAA champions and the team they beat in the title game. You're going to see it real clearly. It is the Blue Bloods. It's Kentucky and UConn and Michigan State and Duke and Maryland and Syracuse and UConn and North Carolina and Florida twice and Kansas and North Carolina and Duke and UConn and Kentucky and Louisville and UConn again and Duke and Nova. The same type of teams winning it every single year, Pauly. This is not a time for long shots to cash.
17 of the last 19 champs have had very specific abilities, a very specific track record, and a very specific stat profile as a team that allowed them to go all the way. Can you explain?
Yeah, this is something I think we're going to go in deeper tomorrow. We talk about the statistical profile, and tomorrow in part 2 of this deep dive is going to be fun. We're just going to go through all the teams. No, they can't win. They have no point guard. Oh, they can't rebound. Oh, they haven't won away from home. And we go through and eliminate a bunch of teams. But we have seen Cinderellas. They get to the title game. Florida in 2000. People don't remember how out of that team came out of nowhere. Where Billy Donovan got his start. Indiana in 2002. The Butler teams from 2010 and 2011 stand out more than any other. Certainly, Butler, the mid-major, making it to the final. But with the exception of UConn, none of those Cinderellas could seal the deal. The eventual champ has been seated no lower than number 3 in every single year except 2014, dating back to 1997. That's when Arizona, with Lute Olson, look at the pick of Lute. He won it all as a number 4 seed. But before that UConn title in 2014, you have to go all the way back to 1988 for a real long shot. That was when Larry Brown guided the Kansas Jayhawks to a championship as a number 6 seed. But again, even these long shots we're talking about, Kansas, UConn, we're not talking about mid-majors. We're not talking about lesser teams. We're not talking about squads at anything but 1, 2, or 3 seeds. To win the big dance, you can't just be good, very good. You have to be great. And what does that mean, Pauly? That means teams with 7 losses or less throughout the course of the campaign.
Do you think about raising the criteria to 8 losses or more, and now teams play more games?
Yeah, that's the funny thing about this, is that every year I think about raising it to 8 losses or less, and I haven't had to. You still come up with the same elite teams using 7 losses or less. And by the way, this is something I do every year before the conference tournaments start. So you're not, before the regular season ends. So the teams that are sitting right at 7 now, they might be eliminated by the weekend. But even though teams play a lot more games now than they did a decade or 2 ago, the 7-loss criteria has paid off.
Do you have to be from a major conference? You mentioned some of these Cinderellas. Butler's a good example too. A lot of these mid-majors have gone to big conferences now.
Well, that's part of the issue with why there are so few quality mid-majors this season. But the answer is yes. Every champion over the last 19 years has been from one of the 6 major conferences. The mid-majors, they tend to measure success with Sweet 16 berths. not Final Four trips. Now, you do have exceptions to that rule. Butler's string of upsets, certainly from the Horizon League. Wichita State making the Final Four. VCU making a run of the Final Four. And we think about the one who kind of started it all, George Mason. Their amazing run of the Final Four 10 years ago from the Colonial Athletic Conference. And it's a big enough shocker that we still talk about it. You know, Memphis made a championship game in Conference USA back in 2008. Utah was in the WAC back in 1998 when they made the title game. But again, neither of those two teams won, and those are the exceptions, not the rule. Basically, if you're not from the Big East, the ACC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, the SEC, or the Pac-12, you're not facing enough quality competition on a night-by-night basis to get ready for an extended tournament run. So you know what that means, Pauly. We get to eliminate some of these quality teams from the are they going to cut down the nets discussion before we even start. All right, Gonzaga, sorry, you're not winning the title this year. SMU, nope. Cincinnati, forget it. Dayton, Middle Tennessee, Wichita State, Monmouth, St. Mary's. You know, it hasn't been a great year for the mid-majors. Gonzaga's the one that has been talked about all this time. Obviously, they've been the number one in the rankings for an extended period of time. They're not winning the title this year. The upper-tier mid-majors are not making my potential champions list, even though, I mean, a bunch of them have Sweet 16 potential. Some of them might even have Final Four potential. Not to win it all. So, Pauly, it's time to list some teams. Using just 7 losses and major conference criteria alone, we can narrow the list down to 21. Okay, and then from that list of 21, we can eliminate probably 4 of them that have no shot of getting a number 3 seed or higher. So we can knock it down to 17 teams. Start the 4 teams, by the way, that you want to read, or you want me to read it?
You nailed it here. You're right. Minnesota, Maryland, Creighton, and Arkansas, they're not going to get a good... Now, Creighton, that's funny because they were a Final Four type team, but then Watson got hurt, and he's out for the year. But, yeah, you're right with those 4 teams about where they're going to get for seeding. So that leaves us with 17 teams to discuss in part 2 tomorrow. You think well, I don't want to say guarantee, but you'll bet that the champion's on that list tomorrow. Yeah,
I mean, again, I'm not making a statement here that's way out of whack with reality. Okay, we're talking about the best teams in college basketball. What I'm saying is that one of these best teams is going to win it, and it's not going to be a long shot. The 7 teams we have, the 17 teams that we are worth talking about here, that have a legitimate shot to win the national title, right here. North Carolina, Duke, Louisville, Notre Dame, Florida State, Kansas, West Virginia, Baylor, Villanova, Butler, Purdue, Wisconsin, Oregon, Arizona, UCLA, Kentucky, and Florida. It's going to be one of those 17 teams, and in part 2 of the deep dive tomorrow, we'll tell you which one.
All right, Money Time Play of the Day, winner with Oklahoma State, 9-1 run in sports. Highway Robbery Sunday with Denzel for Best Actor. Where are we going, Teddy?
Where are we going to go, Pauly? Let's go to game number 519, the Houston Rockets, plus 1.5. My powering number says that Houston should be the favorite in this ball game, and this is a Rockets team that I want to be betting on off a loss. Plus, Chris Paul ain't going to go off for 17 assists without a turnover against this defense either. Take Houston plus the 1.5. That's our play of the day.
All right, big show tomorrow. It's a great card Wednesday in hoops. We'll recap everything in the first segment and part 2 with this coming up tomorrow on SportsBIT. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.